Joined today by a great friend and someone I'm just extremely proud of, and I admire quite a bit as a father and a executive, a leader, a coach, and an influencer of all those people. Gentleman by the name of Mr. Leon Barnes, who we're going to talk with today for about the next 50 or so minutes. And what I hope for is that through this conversation and hearing Leon's story of where he came from and the decisions that he's made along his journey professionally and personally, that there'll be something here that inspires you as a leader to take action. And so for the next 50 or so minutes, we're going to just have a meaningful conversation and learn a little bit more about Leon and his story in the hopes that it will inspire you along the way. So Leon, thanks for joining us. And the first question I have for you is, give us your story. I think each person has a unique background, and I believe that our unique background shapes our perspective of how we look at and approach the world. So if you do us a favor and introduce yourself and then share your background and your story with us.
Sure. First of all, EB, thanks for having me. I feel like this is a conversation that you and I have at dinner quite often, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
You know a lot of my history because in our journey together, we've become great friends, and I look to you, as a mentor and someone that I, love and trust. And it's part of my five. Everybody should have those five people that they surround themselves with, that they want to be like, and they can learn from. And iron sharpens iron. I when I was a kid, I remember quite often going, why can't I have those things that others have? And now I look back and I go, my goodness, I don't know if I become the person I am without the struggle that we had as kids. My mother raised four boys by herself, single parent, which forced me into leadership of my younger brothers quite early in my life. Grew up in Kansas City, Kansas. I remember you and EB, we've had these conversations multiple times. I remember having plenty of government cheese sandwiches and boxes that just said rice on them that were white and black, and powdered milk, the worst thing that you've ever had in your life with your cereal. I just remember those things vividly as motivators to go, there's got to be more than powdered milk. And so it really drove me early on, especially because I didn't know it at the time. And I don't know if I've told you this before, Eric. My mother was an entrepreneur, and I didn't even know what an entrepreneur was. She started cleaning homes. She's a functional illiterate. She didn't graduate high school like back in the 50s and 60s. Mostly is when my mom grew up, is in the 60s. And if you had any type of learning disability, they push you right through. And most of those kids went right to work at 14, 15 years old. And eventually she said, instead of cleaning other people's houses for other companies, she said, I'm just going to do this on my own, and started her own cleaning business. And that's what really motivated me. If I look back on what really pushed me, it was, we were cleaning houses, especially in the summer. I would beg my mom at 8 years old to go to work with her because I wanted some cash, man. We had a penny candy store. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember penny candy. But we had a penny candy store, and I wanted some money to be able to go down there and get some candy every once in a while. And so I would work all day for $20 with my mom cleaning houses in Kansas City. She cleaned homes for wealthy people, including the golfer Tom Watson, if those are familiar. He was one of the houses. They were just such nice people. I remember working there a lot in the summer, and I'd just be in these homes and go, what do they know that we don't? Right? What have they figured out? And most of them were in real estate, or some were in jewelry and family businesses over time. I was just like, man, why do we live like that and they live like this? And I'm 8 years old, 9 years old, thinking there's got to be a reason that these guys have this and we don't. And it really set a path for me to go, all right, there's some keys to success that I can see in having conversations. And the good thing is a lot of those homeowners were really good to my mom. and were really good to me. Like, honestly, I would ask them questions about what they did at 11 and 12 as I became more curious. And a lot of them, went to, I saw the formula was a lot of them had, you know, education, like, we didn't have. And so it really motivated me to become the first person in my immediate family to graduate from college, and really motivated me to want more. And I just always knew it. I just knew that I was going to figure it out because I wasn't going to settle. And I don't know, had I had all those things that those families had, if I would have ever gotten to that point. I'm still, I'm 47 years old and I still don't feel like I've made it. And maybe that's part of the key is like I'm still feel like I'm, moving up rather than just settling and being, good with where I've come to at this point.
It's pretty amazing that you said a lot of stuff there that I made some notes down. First thing is, what's your favorite penny candy?
Ooh, that's a good one. There's so many, but my favorite, this is, there's probably a top five, but the favorite was, you remember the fruit Tootsie Rolls? They were called like
Yeah,
Fruities or
orange,
something like
grape.
that.
Yeah,
Those were my favorite.
yeah, because
Yeah,
I
they're
hate
not
regular
the
Tootsie
chocolate
Rolls.
ones.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
because
regular.
it's just like cocoa and water. There's no
Yeah,
dairy to it.
it's
It was
stuck in your
it wasn't.
teeth. But yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they were like Fruities or something like that. Grape or like you
Lemon?
said, orange
Is there a
or
lemon, orange, grape? I know grape and
well,
orange for certain. I remember those two.
one the second I think would be maybe a 1A 1B would be Laffy Taffies. That would be the other one.
So you
You
go with
know.
that stuff. Yeah, I would have been like a straight Swedish fish.
Okay.
I mean,
Did
because
they
back
make
then
that?
it literally wasn't like just a like they didn't call it penny candy for any other reason. It literally was a penny. So if
Yes.
you had $1 and you could get 100 Swedish, you were balling. With 100 Swedish fish, dude, you could be that's a day's supply, maybe
You
longer.
know, remember I said I would work a full day and I would get $20. And I felt like the richest kid in the neighborhood.
Bro,
20
$20.
bucks.
I'm not good at math, but that's like 2,000 pieces of penny candy,
Dude,
I think.
I well, because here's the thing. The penny candy store didn't just have penny candy. What else did it have? It had
Candy
candy
cigarette.
bars and candy cigarettes and moon pies.
Moon, you
Moon
like a
pies.
moon pie?
Yeah, I didn't love it, but it was the chocolate one was good. But it's not something that you would have every day because that wasn't a penny. That
Yeah.
was like a dollar or two.
Yeah, it's wasteful at that point. Yeah.
Right,
That's
right.
cool.
Yeah. That's probably why I have all these fillings in my teeth at this this age.
Side note about me, you probably didn't know.
Hmm.
Never had a cavity.
See,
Not a single
I'm not
one.
I'm not a dentist, but I know I have a good friend that does not have the dental hygiene that I have and is the exact same. He could chew rocks and never get a cavity. They're
Yeah, I don't
just
know how. I mean, I
it's
brush,
hereditary.
but I'm not like a avid flosser or nothing like that. I don't use like no crazy. Now, however, my mom was a dental assistant when I was growing up. It was like her first real job. Funny that you mentioned that, and I'm always shocked at. And I think it's an important thing to talk about, at least if it's for 3 minutes during this interview. Is that you wrote down. I wrote down, and I think you said the struggle. And I like learned something recently that through conversation and a coach and a mentor that I have, where I was talking about um, just coming to peace with some things in my childhood that weren't ideal, that I wish were different, that I like in some capacity held on to, or maybe even had like a little bit of a grudge about. And she said to me, she said, God chose those parents in that situation for you.
Mhm.
And going through that is the only way you would have been the father that you are today. She's like,
Mhm.
people like you aren't crafted in a nice little setup with a mom and a dad that takes great care of them, and there's a beautiful Christmas. And she's like, sometimes that happens. She said, but like, um, you're almost too much of a father. Like she says, it's probably people look at you sometimes and they're either inspired or embarrassed. And that level of commitment to your children can only really be born through trauma. Like she uses the word trauma. It's like some level of trauma about your childhood. So one thing that I think is amazing, the more I get to learn about people that I today in my 40s have so much in common with, we have so much in common about what happened 35 years ago. And it's like, hey, we look at like how we spend our life. And so what I would encourage anybody that's listening to this, and Leon's a great example, is that if you find yourself in a struggle, you should see that as a gift, because what's happening is God has put you in that situation, because the only way to get to being an extraordinary person is to forge through struggle and trauma and adversity and difficulty. And that's the only way that you can put yourself in a position to lead other men and women. So if anybody's watching this and you find yourself in the midst of a struggle, I would encourage you to switch the perspective and not say, why is this happening to me? And say, what is the blessing in this? How will I evolve as a person, as a leader, as a professional, as an athlete on the other side of this? Like, who will I have to become to
Right.
get through this? And because, and my friend, our mutual friend, Cole Taylor, says, be careful what you pray for.
Mm.
And I said, what do you mean by that? And he goes, well, he said, one time I made a mistake and I prayed for patience. And he said, don't you know, the next day I got to the airport and I had a 3-day delay at the airport, cancellations. I changed airports. And he goes, and I got so frustrated the third day. I was so glad to get home. And I go, I prayed for that, right? Because
Yeah.
we don't generally, unless it's through a miracle, just miraculously get what we want. You have to go through something to become the person that you want, right? Like Leon and I can tell you, we're surrounded by a bunch of super successful, financially secure people, and there was a grind and a season, and some of them are still in it, right? One of the harder things, I don't know if it's harder to make money or keep money. Sometimes I feel like they're both extremely difficult, but I wanted to share that, and I wrote it down when he said it, because a lot of times when you see people that have made it, we don't often advertise the struggle, right? It's like I forget who it was that said it takes 15 years to become an overnight success, and
Yes.
no one ever publicizes the struggle. It's not a good story to tell, or it don't make for a good movie until there's a championship at the end or a success story at the end. So if you haven't got to the end yet, don't look at the struggle as anything other than the certainty that you're probably on the right path. And hopefully that serves as an inspiration to you. That anybody that has a reasonable level of success always has a struggle. Always.
I worry that what's changed since you and I were kids and growing up, and even in our struggle in our 20s, I feel like our society in general, and I do think that we'll make it as a society, we'll make it through this. But man, we've become it used to be, a microwave society. But now I feel like it's like this, even whatever is faster than a microwave. We have to get, like, I think of the struggle going. You and I talk sports a lot, and we automatically assume that guys in their 20s, because they're so talented, should win an NBA championship. I look at Tatum and Brown. Like, they were ready to break that team up, the Celtics. They were ready to break that team up because Charles Barkley, who I really like and have always felt like is the best analyst and maybe the best sports personality out there, was like, Tatum and Brown are the same two players. Like, you got to trade one of them. And that organization said, no, we're going to build with these two young men and continue to put the right pieces around them. Think of what wouldn't have happened recently with them winning a championship if they just said, you know what, those guys are in their 20s. It's not like they, were Jordan 7, 8, 9 seasons in and finally winning their first championship. We've become such this ultra microwave society where you have to have things right now. And I blame a little bit of that on social media. There's a lot of good that comes with social media, but some of the bad is that we see all these people that are Instagram famous and they're in their 20s and they're super successful, right? And we automatically think that we get that overnight. We immediately get that because we deserve that. And I worry a little bit, you know, just moving forward with our society, that everything has to be right now and we don't have to go through the struggle. We see that in real estate investing. The 20 somethings that had success in their first couple of years because the market was really, really good. The market was the star. Well, now they have to be the star because the market has tightened up to them, and they automatically go, whoa, 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 I was really, really good. What happened? And they don't necessarily understand how to handle that struggle that they're going through. So this microwave society that we've become, I think is very important for people listening to this, is that you understand it's part of the process. You're not going to have success every day. You're not going to have a success with every single business right out of the gates, or whatever it is that you're doing. You're going to have to put in the work, and some of the part of the formula is struggle.
So that's some really good wisdom there. And if you want any, by the way, Leon and I didn't prepare for this, so this is not a framed question I'm about to ask him, but I think I already know the answer. If you want proof that the struggle is inevitable, Leon, if you've seen anybody that experiences overnight success in their 20s, what generally happens to those people before they hit 30?
Generally, they have to hit rock bottom at some level. You know, it's different for everybody, but typically when people have success in their 20s, you know, if you use the sports analogy, look at how many, you know, former athletes are bankrupt within a, you know, 2, 3, 4 year time frame. Now, it's a little harder today because they're making so much more money than they made in the 80s and 90s, but still, most people that have success early, they think it's them and not, you know, some of the other things, the timing, the market, if we're talking real estate. But that's generally the golden rule.
They end up struggling anyway. It just happens. And frankly, it's probably, you know, once you've tasted success and you have some money and you have some freedom, you have further to fall. And, you know, that struggle ends up probably being more difficult, more challenging. For the people that care, it might be more embarrassing than it was if everybody expects you to struggle on the way up. But there's like this, you know, sort of expectation or image that like once you've made it, there is no struggle. And the reality is sometimes if the experience of making it and success happens premature, I think what we're trying to communicate is that more times than not, the struggle will get its seat at the table at some point, because to the point is the struggle is inevitable. There's no other way for you to download the discipline, download the wisdom, download the patience that's required to truly have a sustainable level of success. And the reality is, if you make whatever you think success is, a job, a marriage, a group of kids, a business, a bunch of money, it can go away in an instant, right? It doesn't matter what it is. If it's a relationship or a job, one slip up, one mistake, one bad judgment call, and any of those things can vanish. And the only thing that can protect us against losing it all is wisdom. A circle of people. That's one of the things I love about collective genius, right? It's this protection mechanism or this moat around the things that we cherish, that someone would say, you know, I took a call yesterday, Leon, with a CG member that was struggling with some stuff and had a question. And man, like this instance is just the power of the group. I was on a Bible study with an ex-CG member at 10 a.m. And the one thing he said during the call was like, hey, I want to encourage you, the next time somebody's in need of prayer, don't say, I'll pray for you. Pray with them on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
So 4 hours later, I'm on a call with someone and I felt myself going, hey man, I'm going to pray for you. And I was like, oh, hold on for a second. I'm going to take the advice of this friend of mine and I'm going to pray with him. And I gave him 9 pieces of really good advice that helped him. And then we prayed together. we both cried and hung up. And 10 minutes
Mm,
later, he texted me and said, um, thank you for praying for me. It's exactly what I needed. I feel much better.
mm.
So like there was a person in my network that needed me, and I wouldn't be able to pour into that person or give them what they needed had I not connected with another person in my network that earlier in the day inspired me and encouraged me and gave me the insight that I need. Um, so I guess that's kind of my point, right? Is like the wisdom, it took wisdom for that guy to reach out to me and ask for help. It took humility.
Yes,
And a lot of
yes.
times in your 20s, which this guy's barely out of his 20s, you wouldn't know to do that, or you wouldn't have the humility to do it, right? So that's kind of my point, is that the struggle is inevitable. Embrace it,
Yeah.
because it's the one thing that you have to. It's like, I remember the hardest thing I ever did in my life, Leon, was basic training. I mean, it was hard, dude. Now, this is back in 1994. They could still put their hands on you.
You were
Uh,
going through the gas chamber, the whole nine.
Dude, like, I mean, literally, the goal was to break you down physically, mentally, and emotionally, and then build you back up as a group, right? So they bring in, I don't know, there's probably 60 dudes in our platoon.
In my
Um,
head right now, all I can see is Full Metal Jacket, like you going through Full Metal Jacket, the movie.
yeah. And I physically and mentally was in the best shape of my life when I came out of there. But it made, so what they're doing is they take you through that struggle to make you into a world-class soldier. So we won't continue to talk on struggle anymore, but I just want anybody,
Well,
but
I
go ahead if
do.
you have something to add.
I do want to add something to that because as you were getting to the word wisdom, this is why you and I get along so well and always have. Is I was on the same wavelength. I was getting at what's the word that I'm looking for, and I kept going back to education, learning. But the real true word is wisdom, because wisdom includes, like you mentioned, the wisdom to be able to say, I'm going to be humble and ask for help, and also wisdom on the standpoint of I'm always going to continue to learn and not feel like I know everything. There's certain things that you read at times that really just they singe in your head. Like I can never get this one out. One of the most successful Americans of all time, and probably arguably one of the most successful presidents of all time, is Teddy
Not
Roosevelt.
Canadian. No,
Yeah, not Canadian.
okay, I just wanted to verify.
Pre.
Not
Yeah,
Canadian.
yeah,
Okay, all right.
definitely not Canadian.
That's an inside joke, by the way. We'll explain maybe later, but
Yeah, I'm not on that pad, but I love all Canadians, by the way.
I'm on the fence.
But but Teddy Roosevelt is arguably one of the best presidents if you look through history. And I remember reading something on Teddy one time and all the cool stuff that he did, with this country and, the national parks. That was all him. But I think the thing that was ingrained in my head the most was on his deathbed, the day that he died. They found, when they lifted him up, they found underneath his pillow a book. And so even on his deathbed, he was learning. And it's just always, anytime I think about me getting a big head, me, getting out in front of my skis, thinking I'm better than this or better than that, or like you said before, knowing that, okay, I'm doing really, really well. How could I do better? I just go back to that. Like one of the most successful Americans of all time. The day he died, he was still reading and learning. And anytime I think about how can I, humble myself and take my just my life to a different level, I always go back to education, to learning something new, trying something new. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm perfect at that. That's something I have to continue to work on. But man, that just always sticks with me. Now, it's not quite a wristband that says, what would Teddy do? But it's in my
I
head
like that
that
though.
continue to be on a journey of growth. And it's something that I always think about in general. And that's for your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, whatever age you are. I feel like you can figure most things out if you just are on a path to wisdom.
Yeah. It's funny little side note that you say that, and I'm 48, and this past year I've spent a lot of time cleaning up my schedule to make sure that at this phase of my career, leadership is like 85% of how I can contribute to anything that I'm a part of, my family, my business, my circle of friends. And I went through this process of like, if you're not familiar with it, this is a really good book. And Leon, I've read this more than once. I'm reading it again. And I've done it multiple times for different businesses, but I'm doing it now for my personal life. And I think at the top of my flywheel is learning. Like it's either like at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock. And if you haven't read that book, literally, it's by Jim Collins. It is, dude, it's 39 pages. It's the easiest thing to read in the world. The concept of the flywheel is like, if I do this one thing right, it makes the next step in the process that much easier. And then if I get a little bit of momentum by step 3, I don't have to use as much force, right? So it's a really good kind of story about leverage. And the reason I think learning's at the top of my flywheel is because as a leader, my ability to lead becomes easier if I'm constantly acquiring new knowledge from other leaders that have already done what I want to do. So my schedule, to put this into perspective, I own multiple businesses. I have 6 children. I have 40 plus employees. And the priority in my calendar every week is about 15 hours of work time scheduled reading. Like not, I'll try and do it on the plane, or I'll see if I can't maybe make time before bed to read a little bit of my book. No, it's my job. In my job description, there's double-digit hours of reading. And then like the amazing thing is, I find as soon as I read something or learn, to Leon's point, I'll leave here and I'll be able to apply what I learned in that book in my next conversation in the hallway, right? So my ability to lead, which is my number one responsibility, is made easier as long as I continue to learn. And
I will say this: it's so easy to see why you've had the success that you've had. Especially, we got to know each other really well about 4.5, 5 years ago. Because I've been with the Collective Genius for 6 years now, and you and I met, and I just remember who you were then and who you are now are 2 different people. And you were successful then, but the leader that you've become, I would say the secret sauce to your formula, which is the piece of it that people don't see. They're like, man, Eric's just got it figured out. He understands how to hire executives. He's got a great team. Everybody that he hires as an executive is somebody that everyone in this group would want on their team. And I think the piece of it that a lot of young entrepreneurs that are looking at you as a North Star, I think the piece of it that if they really truly knew the secret sauce to your success, it's that right there. Because I can tell you many conversations on planning for our meetings, it comes from you of, hey, I'm reading this really great book right now that I think that a lot of people would get value from. It's super impressive how you've added that to your schedule. And I don't want to gloss over that learning piece of it. I'm glad we had this conversation because it inspires me to add more to my schedule. I think we've talked about this a little bit. I'm 14 years ago, I think I started coaching youth sports. My son is 12. My oldest son is 12. I think it was maybe even 15 years ago. I knew that at some point, more than likely, I would have kids. And I knew how youth sports, especially, coming out of AAU myself, I knew how it was continuing to become a money grab and people looked at it differently. And so I started coaching to say, you know what, in case, number one, I love sports. Number two, I love coaching and leading. And when I did that without kids, people were like, you don't have a kid on the team? Why are you coaching? And I was like, this is my internship for when if I do have kids, girls or boys that want to play basketball, especially, I'll have this experience. I didn't know that journey was going to make me so much better and so much more well-rounded from a business perspective. I didn't know how much I missed. We moved to Florida 4 years ago from Kansas, and I left Kansas. I was coaching a summer basketball AAU travel team, and I also finished up as an assistant high school basketball coach. And I left it when COVID happened. I moved to Florida. I gave it up for a couple of years, just trying to get, into our new community. And I look back at those 2 years of not coaching, and I wasn't the leader. I wasn't the father that I should be, and I know I'm capable of being without that in my life. It was a missing piece of the formula for me to be a better leader. So fast forward to this year, my 12-year-old made his first travel team, and I got involved immediately. And I just felt the energy, my getting up every day for work, my getting up every day to challenge my kids to be better, challenge me to be better. I found myself figuring out how to coach my kids better, better defenses to run. I'm like literally every day spending an hour, if not more, on how can I be a better coach, which then led to why are you not doing more of this from a business standpoint?
Yeah.
And I find that when I'm leading youth basketball, it makes me so much better and such a better leader in everything else that I do, because I get up in the morning and go, well, I can't let those kids down. And why would I let anyone down if I can't let those kids down? Just it's when you lead, it forces your hands to be better.
It's kind of funny. We've taken a little bit of that thinking to another level here at our office, and we don't have management titles, supervisor titles. They're all coaches. Like we refer to them as coach because that's how we want them to act, right? So when you think about like what you said, like I had this image in my brain. It's like Coach Leon rolls up. There's 10 children that have a uniform on. They have a scheduled time to be somewhere. They know that it's going to end in 2 hours, and there's an outcome that they want in between. It's the exact same thing people do at the office. They show up in their uniform.
That's
they
right.
look to the person that's in charge, and they say, hey, in 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, I'd like to win at the end of that shift. And I'm looking to you to help facilitate. It's literally the exact same thing. That's like, if you look at the balance of guest and even host on this podcast, it's a blend of like executives, entrepreneurs, athletes, and coaches in business and coaches. And we do shade a little bit towards basketball. I do kind of have like, of all the sports that I enjoy watching, is a little bit of a soft spot for basketball. But so we end up with a lot of basketball coaches and basketball players on here. But yeah, it's amazing when you can get to, and I think what you said there, right, that you've discovered like your unique ability is coaching. And when you do it specifically in youth basketball, it uncovers what's inside of you that otherwise kind of gets buried. And, so that's what your anointing, right? Like your unique ability. There was something, a seed that was planted in you when you were a child or even before, right? And what I would call that, or what my pastor would call that, is you're being obedient. There's a calling on your life. There's a calling on your heart, and everything, even how you grew up and with your mother and where you grew up in Kansas, which is, some would say, a basketball mecca, right? And some of the schools around there and in and around AAU and prep, of some of you may know Sunrise Christian Academy, right? And of course, that's why you were born there under those circumstances, to become a basketball coach and then take that and use it to lead others in your life. I would encourage anybody to try and, man, the quicker you can get to a point of clarity to know what your unique ability is, what your anointing is, and then align your work and align your hobbies, align your private time, align your work time with that, the happier you're going to be. And the further you'll go. Like if we're talking about being a championship, we're talking about being a leader. that's where you should be leading people. And it may be in basketball, it may be in business, it may be at church, it may be at your daughter's field hockey team, right? But trust your instincts, because instincts come from somewhere. It's
There's a,
natural.
I'm so glad you hit with the happy word, um, because that's a piece that I missed earlier. Um, you mentioned there was something that sparked that. Well, that anointing came from paying it forward for all the coaches that I felt like were my father figures that I didn't have. Like I'm not ever going to be a victim, because I feel like I had men that stepped up, that saw that I didn't have, a father figure in my life. And these are these are men that I look to today that I go, without their influence, I don't know if, I probably would have figured things out, but it gave me such a leg up for a kid that didn't have, two parents, which I can either be a victim or I can do something about it, right? And I look back and I go, I owe it to them to pay it forward. And I don't have any kids that I coach right now currently that, don't have a father in their life, which is really cool, honestly. For the first time ever, I can say that, that I have involved parents that want their kids to continue to be better, and invest in them. But that fulfillment of doing something, like, I know a lot of people may be listening to this, may not be in a professional career that fulfills them anymore. Whether that's, because it's not exactly what they want to do, or they've done it so long that it's no longer fulfilling. But if you want to make that flywheel of happiness truly continue to go round and round and round, I think that giving back is a great piece to the formula of happiness. The more you give without any expectation, like, I don't get paid a dime. Even in high school basketball, they paid us. That money went right back into helping kids that couldn't afford this, or buying shoes
Yes.
for kids, those type of things. Like, when you give without any expectation of giving back, there's two things there. Number one, you're fulfilled, and then the fulfillment is also on seeing young people, especially for me, young people take that next step of learning something. Like, conceptually, you put a game plan together, and I would argue, but also, Eric, football is another great sport to utilize with basketball as well, because football is one of those sports where you're given a playbook, you learn the playbook. I, as a coach, walked you through the little intricate details of how to do that play perfectly, and then you run the play. Very, very similar to business, right? But when you do those type of things, you give back, and like you said, whether it's church groups, sports, arts. My wife was a dancer. I always tell her that at some point she's got to get back into. She was an adjunct professor at the university level. I'm like, you got to get back to doing that, because that's your joy. That's what brings you joy. That brings you fulfillment. And to me, that's ultimately, you may work more hours in a day, but those 2 or 3 hours that you're doing that are giving back to others, that's the time where you're not tired anymore. That's the time where you wake up in the morning and you go, I did something good today, and that leads to happiness.
Yeah. So we got let's see, 11 minutes here. I got two questions I want to close with. Um, First is, who's been most influential mentors in your life?
Mm. Well, I would say I referenced a youth coach. In fact, I'm overdue on creating this. He doesn't know this, but there's a coach named George Ross in Kansas that was an unbelievable athlete in his day, and it became a mentor for not only me but a ton of kids in our community growing up. And he was such an integral part of my development as an athlete, but also as human. that I'm overdue on creating. I want to create a scholarship in his honor because he's made such an impact for not only me, but hundreds of kids in our community that I went to high school in, and it's just selfless. Seeing kids that don't have what the things that they need, um, and just investing in young people. I've never seen a coach have so many different generational impacts. Like I'm sure you have those in Pennsylvania where you have a coach that's been doing it for 40 or 50 years. And he's had influence on not only the grandfather, but also the dad
Yeah.
and the sons and daughters. And still to this day, he is volunteering at the Boys and Girls Club. And, it's just, those are the type of human beings that, that I want to be like and encourage me to give back. And that's the whole reason I got into coaching was because of Coach Ross.
If you could boil it down to one word or a group of words in a short sentence, what would be um, your best description of a leadership principle or something you took away from that gentleman um, that you've carried on into your life now and are passing on to your kids and the people we have the opportunity to lead now?
He saw more in me than I saw in myself at the time. And I think the biggest, if I had to boil that down, it would be he didn't allow me to not reach my full potential, right? He didn't allow me to waste it. Like he was like, here's your potential. What I see. I think that you see this. And that gap right there of pushing me to get to that is the difference, I think, in why he's so influential. He didn't allow me to not maximize my own potential.
Can I
Like
give you
I
something
had
from
to
that
hit that.
that like speaks to me? I'd love for you to write this down because I think this will be something that I want you to use this. What I hear you say when you describe that is one of the greatest gifts you can give someone is to believe in them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as a leadership principle, I think one of the key takeaways there, and you experienced it, right? I said, what's the one thing? Like, of all the things he's done over the last 50 years and everything, what resonated with you was he believed in me more than I did.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's, for you and the impact that that guy had on you, use that as a reminder that one of the greatest gifts you can give to someone, particularly as a leader, is to believe in them and express that. Like literally, it could be as easy as saying, "I believe in you."
Yeah,
Right. And
I
sometimes
see
that's,
it. I
yeah,
see it now, Eric. You know my 12-year-old son Kai really well, and the reason I'm in a hotel right now doing this podcast with you is because he's at his first overnight camp. And he called us the first night because we dropped him off and he's at the college dorms the whole nine.
yeah.
Called us when he got done with his day at 9:30 at night. Yesterday they started at 7:45 and he called us at 9:30. And the first day, when we dropped him off, you had a good conversation with him, and so did I. Of just look, this we everyone believes in you, not only as a basketball player, but as a young man. We believe in your potential, and you are someone that you're going to go in here and not necessarily, you don't have to go in there to dominate, just going to get better every single day. And do you know, when he called us, um, the first thing he said, he was super nervous about it. And I thought for sure he would go, the thing I loved the most, Dad, was actually the drills and playing in the gym. Do you know this 12-year-old, the thing he loved the most? Classroom setting. The classroom. They go gym to class and look at film and working on, IQ, basketball IQ. And I was like, buddy, if I already believe in you. But if you, as someone that loves to play the game of basketball, if your biggest takeaway that you love the most is the classroom, I believe in you even more, son, because that tells me how much you love the game.
Yeah.
And that also sets the tone for later in his life, right? That's what we're talking about, the education piece of it. He loves to study it to apply it. And
Yeah. And
so
like
I
for
see it
anybody
now.
that the impressive part about me, what happens in the film room, and you've met and talked to our family basketball expert, Coach Sam Sutton.
Yeah.
He says film doesn't lie. So like really what happens in the film room is it requires humility for you to watch film and see where you did well, but more importantly what we're talking about is where we came up short and where we can improve. So what I see about that is the education piece, but also the level of humility that's required to go in and embrace the classroom setting and film work. Because really what you're going to find in there is, hey, this is the area you need to improve. Here's the proof, and we have a plan to improve. So that's amazing. So as we close, here's what I want you to answer. How do you want to be remembered?
Man, that's a long one. Um, I think I can summarize it with um, goodness. I went to summarize and got a little emotional thinking about it.
Yeah.
Um, I just truly want to be known as someone that cared about others, maybe even more so than himself. Um, I genuinely care for those that um, are in my life, not just family, friends as well. I want the best for them. Um, I just want to impact lives, man. Like my life was impacted by someone that wasn't my blood, you know?
Yeah.
Um, I truly want to be known as someone that genuinely cared about other humans and wanted to help them reach their full potential. That's what the collective genius, that's why it fits me so well. Um, it's not, you know, just, um, it's not just, I don't just say it, I truly live it and want everyone to reach their maximum potential. And
You're doing a good
um,
job so far.
I appreciate that. I want, you know that you've had a successful life if you've impacted enough. I think of Glenn Schwarm, another collective genius member who I talk to often. One of my favorite presentations I've watched of his is the impact that his father had on people. So much so that there was a line around the block to get into his funeral.
Yeah.
Um, I wish that for me in the future. Hopefully, long time away, give me more opportunity to make more impact. But
Yeah.
I truly want to make an impact on others, um, and then it becomes that that drop of water that continues to make ripples for many generations to come.
Cool. Well, I'm here to encourage you along the way. I appreciate you being here today. If anybody wants to find you or the Collective Genius, how can they do that?
Yeah, so it's pretty easy. Thecollectivegenius.com. I'm available on there. It's our website. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook as well. Always open to chat, but that's the best way.
All right, brother. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Love you,
Appreciate you
dude.
as well.
See you, bro.
You-
Bye.
Yep.